Today's lesson we're going to talk about the equation of a line and its properties. So one of the things we're learning is that the equation line has the form of the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So we're going to take a look at that. Where does that come from? Why does that work? That type of thing. And I'm learning to complete computable values to draw a straight line to represent an equation. So we're going to start off a little slow, and then we're going to pick it up. This idea here is we're going to try to sketch the line y equals 2x plus 3. And what we're going to do is determine the slope, all right, determine the y-intercept, and make those connections. So we're going to complete the table of values first. When we are doing that, we're going to substitute in values of x that we see here on the left into this equation of y equals 2x plus 3. And by doing that, what we do is we replace x with the value of x that I have there. And then I end up using BEDMAS to evaluate it. So I can go 2 times 0 is 0, plus 3, that's going to get me 3. And then I can keep doing that. 2 times 1 plus 3, because we're looking for x equals 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3, get you 5. Hopefully when you're doing this, you're going to see patterns. And math is all about patterns. And hopefully as you see this, is I can look at this, well, what is happening here? Well, I'm adding 2 for every one step that I'm running. So I can look at that and I can say, well, my slope is rise over run, which is equal to 2 over 1. In this case is 2. So what we've done there is we actually found the slope of the line. All right. So hopefully what happens is this is a straight line. These will all add up by 2. Well, let's take a look. Substitute 2 for x. 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 3 is 7. Oh, that's good. That's good. Plus, when I added 2, I got an extra, get to 7. All right. All right, substitute that in there. 6 plus 3, that gets me 9. And I can keep going with that. I can find more points. I can predict what the next point will be. I can say, hey, you know what? If I was at 5, I should be at 13 because I'm adding 2 each time. All right. The other thing is we got to find this y-intercept. So we have to look at those. So let's see if we can plot points. All right. So we're going to plot this point 0, 3, 1, 5, over 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over 1, up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Oh, there's a pattern. All right. If I've gone over 1 up 2, that's what kind of looks like the slope is. All right. So I can predict, if this is a linear line, I can predict, and even going backwards, I can draw that line. And what to do is we want to extend these lines because these lines can go on forever. All right. So we've graphed the line. We've made a table of values. We can predict moving forward or backwards if we wanted to, more values. The other thing is, where do we find the y-intercept? We find the y-intercept when the line crosses the y-axis. Well, if I look at that, there's my y-axis. Well, this is where it crosses. All right, so it crosses at y equals 3. All right, so that's kind of what that looks like. All right, each of these are points, so 0, 3, 1, 5, 2, 7, 3, 9, and I can write those. Each of those points are a plot on the table. All right, but when we are doing this, that's what we're looking for, is do I know my slope? Do I know my y-intercept? Can I make a graph? All right, and this is always going over 1 up 2, over 1 up 2, or rise of 2, run of 1, that type of thing. All right, so these two things will always hold true. All right, and I can keep going with that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit pause in a second. What I want you to do is I want you to do the same thing for this equation as we did up here, and then you can check with me to see how well you did it. So I'm going to push pause now. All right, and we'll let Magic take its course here. And as you can see, I did the same work with BEDMAS before. I substituted the values of x into there, and I evaluated using BEDMAS to get those numbers. All right, kept going. And I noticed there when I was doing it, I subtracted 2 each step for every one I was doing. So that's where I got the slope from, as -2 over 1, or -2. And my y-intercept is 9, because that's where it hits the y-axis. So when you're looking at any equation, mx plus b, you can take a look at that equation and say to yourself that there's my value of m, and there's my value of b. So I guess that should have been 9. All right, so you can find this information in 3 different ways. You can find it by the table of values. So this is my y-intercept, because that's where it's x equals 0. Same thing there. All right, I can find it for my equation, and I can find it from my graph. 3 different spots gives you the same information, and you should be able to interpret that moving forward. All right. The next example that we're going to take a look at is a little different. So if I'm looking at that, I can say to myself, all right, I've got my equation here. I got y equals 3/2 x minus 2. So you're going to ask yourself, well, what's different there? Well, what's different there is my slope is a little bit different. We know that our slope is my value of n. So what's going to happen is that for every slope that I'm going to go, 3 over 2, for every rise of 3, I have to run 2. Well, we know that whatever our rise and run are, it has to be run of 3, or rise of 3, and run of 2 from there. So we know that these values have to go up by 2 because it tells us to run by 2 units each time. So that's why these are factors of 2. All right, to get whole answers. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sketch this graph by hitting pause here, and then we're going to talk about making sure that the answers that we get are make sense. So I'm going to hit pause here for a second, and I'm going to sketch the graph, and then we're going to talk about why we think the answers are that. All right, so I plotted the graph here, but I'm going to show you how I did that by using the table of values. But for some people, they can actually probably interpret this stuff onto this graph, and we'll kind of figure that out. So if you need to push pause again just to see that graph, that's fine. But I'm going to kind of go ahead here and then fill in the stuff. So what I can do here is, just like I did before, I can evaluate those. Anything times 0 is 0. So 0 times that minus 2. Well, that answer's got to be negative 2. So there's my first point on my graph. All right. That's my y-intercept. When x equals 0, that tells me my y-intercept. All right, let's see what happens when we do it by... Well, when we multiply fractions, we have to put a number over 1 to make multiply fractions. So we have to be mindful of how we multiply fractions. We have to be reminding ourselves, how do we multiply fractions? Well, we take 3 times 2, we multiply the tops. 2 times 1, that's 2. And then I can divide that out. That gets me positive 1. So I can go over here, and at 2, I'm at 1. So that's that point there. So, and the other question you ask yourself is, here, I went up by 3. That's a good thing for my run of 2. So hopefully you see the connections. All right, these are adding by 2 each time, and these should be adding by 3. Okay. So let's do the next one. 3 over 2 times 4. All right, I'm going to put this 1 underneath so that I know how to multiply fractions. I've got 12 over 2 by multiplying those fractions together. 12 divided by 2 is 6 minus 2 gets me 4. And did I add 3 that time? I sure did. So one of the things that we hopefully can look at is, do I see the trend? Well, I've added 3 each time, so that should be 7. That is 10, as these ones are going up by 2. Okay. The same thing works for a graph. Same thing works for a graph. All right. I got my y-intercept. All right, there's my y-intercept. Or my b value. All right. And then from there, I can ask myself my slope. Right? So if I look at this, right, I had a run of 2 and a rise of 3. Right? And I can continue that set of stairs. Moving forward. Now I know I can't see that really well on the screen, but hopefully when you see that, over 2 up 3, over 2 up 3, over 2 up 3, all those things are connected. And they're all connected through this. All right. So my equation is connected to that. The table is connected to that. and the graph is connected to that. So all these information exhibits the same thinking. And as you're learning this, you may learn this differently than other students, and that's fine. But the idea here is these are all interconnected. They all represent the same thing. And that allows us to answer questions for problems that we're going to see moving forward as we do this. All right, so let's take the learning and do the learning a little bit differently. Now I give you the graph. Well, if I look at this, I still want to be able to find my slope and my y-intercept and make it visible. Make it visible so that the person reading it can see how you get that answer. Because you're going to look back on these notes and say to yourself, well, how did I get that answer? Does it make sense to me? By giving yourselves little hints, all right, helps you with that. All right, so here, my rise and run. Well, my rise is -3/1, and that's okay to leave it as -3. All right, my y-intercept. Okay. All right, and if it helps you to draw that line in, all you just got to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, my b is 9 because I have a point at 0, 9. All right. Take 30 seconds, write down the equation. Push pause, write down the equation. So hopefully you wrote down y equals -3x plus 9 because we want to write it down in the form of y equals mx plus b. So you replace m with -3, b with 9. So what I would like you to try now is try the same thinking here. Find your slope, find your y-intercept, write your equation for the graph on B, push pause, and then come back and you can check your answer. So try it for B. So hopefully you got that answer of 1/2 x plus 1. And what I did that is find your rise and run. All right, find 2 points. There's my run. I have a rise of 1, run of 2, and I have find my y-intercept. All right, and I can make my equation. So hopefully that sticks with your brain, and you can keep going on to the last page. All right. So the last question is basically finding finding the slope and the y-intercept. Now, you think of this and say to yourself, Mr. Brzee, this is pretty easy. All right, because if I write down y equals mx plus b, I can say right here, all right, m has to be 3/4, b has to be -5. All right, but put some names to it. Tell me that it is the slope. All right, so don't just put down m and b. Tell me in English what that represents. All right, same thing with this. Some people need a visual reminder that goes with that. Make sure you take the signs with it. M is -2. My B is 7. So that's my slope, my y-intercept. Well, if I look at C, it gets a little crazier. Now, if I write down y equals mx plus b, I don't know what goes in front of that. But if you remember seeing some of those posters at the front of the room, that represents 1x. So another way of writing that equation, 1x plus 3. Now I can see that my slope is m equals 1 and my y-intercept is that. So just keep that in mind if there's not a number there. All right. Well, a lot of people will look at D and say to themselves, hey, you know what? My slope is m equals 6 and my y-intercept is equal to negative 1/2. Would they be right? No, they're not. Because if I was writing this, y equals mx plus b, well, where's the term with the x? Is it in this spot? No, it's over here. So sometimes we have to rewrite this to see the pattern. So I can say this, I could just switch the spots. Negative 1/2 x plus 6. Since that 6 is positive, we can just make that a positive 6. Now, that's in the same form as that. All right, so my m is negative 1/2, and my b is positive 6. So I can think of that as some of the challenges that you could see as you're working through that today. All right, take care.